Before the lights and the glory, there was darkness, sweat, and fire. There were men hanging over the void and steam engines roaring against the Paris sky. Travel back in time to 1889 and witness the ascension of the greatest monument ever built by human hands. Paris, 1887. A city of stone and history stands on the brink of a radical transformation. What began as a controversial dream, a seemingly impossible equation of iron and mathematics, would soon rise to become a defining symbol of a nation. From the deep, suffocating mud of the foundations to the breathless moment of touching the clouds, this is the untold story of the steel scar that forever changed the skyline of the world. Welcome to the birth of the Iron Lady. The cold, sharpened iron blade breaks the damp, resistant earth of the Champ de Mars, marking the violent and noisy beginning of a battle against the soil itself. Deep within the foundation pit, far below the level of the Seine, the air is heavy, thick, and suffocating. The humidity clings to the wooden walls as the flickering, yellow light of oil lamps barely reveals the monumental effort required to lower the massive compressed air casings into the unstable riverbed. Above ground, the steam engines roar to life with a deafening rhythm, spitting thick white clouds of vapor and black grease into the pristine air, a mechanical symphony that drowns out the shouting of the foremen and the doubts of critics. The first raw iron beams arrive on heavy wooden carts drawn by horses, the metal dark, unpainted, and silent, waiting to be awakened by the fire. Every strike of the chisel against the stubborn limestone raises a fine, glittering dust that dances in the shafts of sunlight, slowly materializing the complex geometric designs that the wind tries in vain to snatch from the engineer's fluttering drafting tables. The intense, blistering heat of the forge distorts the air, shimmering like a desert mirage as the rivets turn a dangerous, glowing red, ready to bind tons of cold metal together for all eternity. Massive chains crack and groan under extreme tension, lifting the sheer weight of history inch by agonizing inch, until the first inclined iron base finally tears itself in the ground, a jagged red claw pointing accusingly at the sky, demanding space. The heavy, relentless rains of the Parisian winter transform construction site into a vast mirror of churning mud, reflecting the chaotic, messy birth of a giant that refuses to be ignored by the city that surrounds it. Workers take their brief, exhausted respite sitting on piles of loose bricks, eating simple meals of bread and cheese, seemingly unaware of the architectural miracle rising behind their backs. The perspective of the pillars begins to shift, becoming vertiginous, a dizzying array of intersecting angles that challenges the human eye to find a stable horizon. Creeper cranes cling like mechanical insects to the inclined structure, pulling heavy loads through the thick coal smoke, and as the sun sets over Paris, painting the river in gold, the black silhouette of the unfinished tower cuts a sharp, jagged line against the sky set on fire. On the Seine, heavy barges sway rhythmically with the weight of yet more steel, feeding the insatiable hunger of a beast that grows taller and more demanding by the hour. The rhythmic, metallic impact of the sledgehammer on the hot rivet becomes the heartbeat of the tower, a pulse felt across the entire city. Lanterns sway in the darkness of night, their weak beams revealing only fragments of a structure that never truly sleeps, a skeleton of shadow and light. From high up on precarious wooden scaffolding, the men on the ground are reduced to mere ants, scurrying in the mud, while a pile of timber and iron, forgotten in the cold rain, awaits its destiny in the clouds. The first tricolor flag is waved triumphantly in the wind, a burst of blue, white, and red celebrating the hard-fought conquest of the first level, a victory over gravity. Looking straight up from the center, the infinite geometry of the girders create a mesmerizing metal kaleidoscope against the pale sky, a pattern so complex and repetitive it seems to spin before your eyes. Pistons covered in thick, black oil push the machine of progress forward with relentless force, while the delicate, white frost of the morning clings to the cold iron at high altitudes, melting only when the sun climbs high enough to warm the steel. Debris falls from the heights, tumbling through the air and exploding into muddy ground below with a dull, heavy thud, a constant, lethal reminder of gravity's unforgiving presence. Calloused hands, stained with rust and dirt, seek a firm grip on improvised cloth wrappings, weaving their own safety with the friction of their skin against the unforgiving steel. Heavy leather boots walk steadily over wooden planks, suspended over a terrifying void, where a single slip means silence and darkness. The rain turns boxes of rivets into dark, shimmering puddles that reflect the gray, overcast sky. Suddenly, the sun bursts through the open metal lattice, creating shafts of divine light that momentarily blind those looking up in awe, turning the iron into a silhouette of light. A small bird lands on a lunch tin forgotten in the dizzying heights, pecking at crumbs, completely oblivious to the abyss below, while the steam from the engines dissipates to reveal the structure emerging from the fog like a solid, industrial phantom. On the horizon, the city of Paris stretches out under a blue haze, looking suddenly small, fragile, and ancient before the new height conquered by man. A gloved hand touches the cold railing with a sense of quiet respect, testing the solidity of the work before turning to the panoramic view that no human has ever seen before. Spiral staircases rise like iron snakes, coiling upwards and drawing perfect. Sharp shadows on the floor, a testament to design as much as function. The painter's brush loads thick Venetian red paint, covering the raw gray metal with the color of protection, sealing against the elements for generations to come. Heavy canvas tarps snap and ripple violently under the force of the high-altitude winds, a sound like cracking whips that echoes through the structure. Steel cables glide smoothly through greased pulleys, the vital arteries for the elevators that will soon carry the world to the sky in comfort and safety. The shadow of the tower acts as a giant sundial, moving across the wooden floor to mark the passing of the age, sweeping over the city like a clock hand. At the absolute summit, the French flag fights the gale, sovereign and lonely, claiming the air itself as French territory. Massive gears turn in the darkness of the engine room, grinding with the sound of progress, and the view from the top reveals the curvature of the world to the smoke of 1,000 chimneys. The final rivet, polished and symbolic, is hammered home, sealing the structure's destiny and closing the loop of construction. But the tower still asks for its crown. The blue sky fills the void where the top should be. Glowing rivets fly through the air, tossed with the casual skill of acrobats and caught in funnels by men who trust their lives to their reflexes and their partners. Antique blueprints flutter in the wind, checked by engineers in frock coats and top hats, men of the 19th century building the monument of the 20th. The steam crane at the very summit releases its white smoke, operating at the edge of the atmosphere, while handsaws cut through the scaffolding wood, scattering golden sawdust that sparkles in the sun like falling stars against the iron grid. Rusted chains creak in ancient pulleys, the sound of friction and age, while workers eat their lunch suspended in the air, legs dangling over the void, observing the city with the casualness of gods living in the clouds. The yellow flame of a gas lamp flickers in the wind, illuminating the iron at twilight with a warm, organic glow that fights the encroaching night. The spiral staircase shows off its artistic details, the Art Nouveau curves contrasting with the rigid beams, and the final beam finally touches the March sky, completing the skeleton of the giant. The painter's brush glides once more, applying the gradient bronze tone that defines the tower's final elegance, darker at the base to ground it, lighter at the top to mimic the atmosphere. Mahogany and crystal elevator cabins slide like luxury carriages along the inclined rails, a marvel of Victorian engineering that brings the salon to the sky. The newspaper press prints fresh news in the heights. The ink's still wet and smelling of chemicals, and glass globes are polished until they reflect the intricate metal lattice like crystal balls. Down below, the chaotic mud gives way to the geometric gardens of the Expo, transforming the scars of construction into a park of wonder and symmetry. Polished leather shoes rush down the perforated steps, the sound of excitement echoing in the stairwell, and the reflection of the sun on the neighboring gallery's glass roofs announces the future is here. An inspector marks the final bolt with white chalk, a small gesture that approves 1,000,000 tons of metal. Black umbrellas open under the rain of the inauguration, a sea of silk. But soon the sun breaks the clouds, illuminating the flag at the summit and drying the newborn iron, making it shine like gold. At nightfall, the lamplighter awakens the gas flame, creating artificial stars that cling to the structure. The noon cannon fires, shaking the air with a puff of white smoke that signals the time to the entire city. The Victorian crowd, dressed in their finest silk and wool, points upward in sheer awe, unable to comprehend the scale of what stands before them. The wax phonograph spins, the needle carving the